we go, Brownies. Here we go. Here we go, Brownies. Here we go. Yeah, this for my dogs from the east to the west side. You rockin' brown and orange with me, baby. Let's ride. Represent the land, let them know. Tell them, here we go, Brownies. Here we go. Yeah, here we go.
Join the Dog Pound on the road this season with True Fan Travel, an official fan experience partner of the Cleveland Browns. Travel to stadiums across the country with other Browns fans and experience the games like never before. This trip includes everything: a private charter flight, hotel, an all-inclusive tailgate, game tickets, boat party, transportation, and more. Cheer on the Browns in New Orleans and party with Cleveland Browns legend Kevin Mack.
That was weird. Did that freeze for you?
It just kind of ended. A little.
All right, that was weird. All right, I don't know. Maybe it's my headphones. Sorry, everybody. Some technical issues right off the top. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Here We Go Brownies podcast. I'm Allie Heisong, coming to you live from Pensacola, Florida. Joined with me, as always, out in beautiful Cleveland, Ohio. We've got Dustin. Dustin, the Browns lose today, 27-10 over, or Chargers beat the Browns, rather. How you feeling? I know you were there. Talk to us. Paint the picture. Tell us the story.
I don't know what to really say because there was so much momentum coming into this game. Now, granted, the Chargers were favored by a point or two, so nothing crazy. But there were moments in this game where it looked like it was a really good football team, and then there was other moments in this football game that looked like they couldn't beat anybody in the National Football League. So this game was all over the place.
Yeah.
The defense, I mean, Myles Garrett, I believe, had 3 sacks on 3 consecutive plays, which I think is crazy to think of in this football game, 3 sacks. But just giving up some big plays downfield, I don't know, they just seemed out of sync on both sides of the ball. And then, of course, Winston throwing 3 picks. We know that's something that can happen with him, but we're driving and then just a turnover in the end zone. You know, just stuff that they beat themselves today because I got to be honest, obviously the Chargers came in with a really good defense, but they also they kept us in the game, right? Like they weren't like putting us away. And I felt like the Browns had a lot of opportunities today and we just didn't capitalize on them in a lot of ways. So
I think one thing that's jarring is you look at this Chargers team, they're not a good football team. Yeah, they've got an okay defense. They got Joey Bosa back. Of course, we saw the impact that Khalil Mack had. Derwin James. Of course, they've got some players. But offensively, outside of Justin Herbert and J.K. Dobbins, yeah, they have Ladd McConkey and they have Quentin Johnston. But other than that, you have to remember, Austin Eckler's out. Mike Williams is gone. Keenan Allen's gone. Those big-time players are gone, and they're very young. I mean, this is a very beatable team, or what should have been a very winnable game for your Cleveland Browns, and it wasn't. But I think you're absolutely right that there's many moments in this game where the Browns could have strung together some positive plays to get some points. They didn't. They just continuously shot themselves in the foot. It's almost, Dustin, like we're back to when this team was very young, 2018, 2019, and didn't know how to win. They would just get in their own way and figure out a way to lose. It's almost like we're back to that, which is remarkable given how many veterans are on this Browns team.
Yeah, and I think there's also, we'll get into this on our Wednesday show, but this could look like a very different football team with the trade deadline. That's going to be happening over the next 48 hours, right? We may be looking at a very different football team. And then this team has to really look in the mirror and say, okay, clearly we aren't going anywhere this year, but who is our identity and who are we going to try to be in 2025, right? There are some big things that are going to have to come over the next couple of weeks with the bye week, the trade deadline. And this team really is going to have to do some soul searching and figure out what they want their identity to be, because I don't feel like they have much of an identity right now. And there's some good players on this team and there's some stars, on this team, but as a cohesive unit, they're just
not there. It's just not there. And of course, you don't have JOK on defense today. However, I thought Muma Diabate stepped up in a huge way. You're out Jordan Hicks, JOK. He steps up, and we're seeing a young player, Muma Diabate, really kind of flourish before our eyes. And that's refreshing to see his development at a linebacker position that we haven't really had prior to. Dustin, I've been pounding the table for good linebacker play since we started the show. It's been quite some time since we've had solid linebacker play, but
Right.
it's nice to see the development there. But otherwise, I thought our secondary they had a tough day. They had a really tough day. Denzel Ward. There's a couple of, obviously we saw the blown and busted coverages. Now I have to go back and look and see whose fault was what. I think Greg contributed to one of the busted coverages. Denzel wasn't supposed to go. Then you had Thornhill. Like, it was a whole thing. So I need to go back and look and see who's at fault for a lot of those things. But regardless, the secondary it continues to struggle this season. I thought the pass rush was good. Didn't have to throw a lot of crazy stuff at Justin Herbert in this Chargers offense. They were organically, getting home. We saw it. Myles Garrett with 3 sacks on the day. I think that Okoronkwo, he had a good day. Myles had a good day. The front four, they were able to create some organic pressure, which was nice and refreshing to see. But overall, it's the cohesion. You mentioned it. Yeah, we've got some stars. We've got some players. We've got young players that have a ton of potential. But for some reason, offensively, defensively, and even on special teams, it's just not coming together.
Yeah, and I think this team lost some of their identity, right? They, when you get on a losing streak, tempers flare. Now, of course, we haven't seen that spill into the public very much. Like a divided locker room or anything like that. They still seem to be playing as a unit, but it was frustrating to watch Stefanski's press conference today, and it's like I almost could have hit record. We just got to play better. I was like, I know exactly what he's going to
better. It's the same thing. I mean, it's just like 2017, 2018. I need to go back and watch the tape. It's like, my God, accountability, leadership. We've been begging for it. It's frustrating. It's frustrating. We're back to it. I know we had a big high last week where the Browns came away with a win. That was a ton of fun. But we're back to talking about the Browns like we were. It was just a tough watch. Tough day.
And look, the Ravens are who they are. They showed up again this Sunday, right? I mean, the Ravens showed up who they are again this Sunday. So it's like, the Ravens are still a really good football team.
Yeah.
And do they got some holes on defense that they got to figure out? Of course. But this team, I mean, the best way to describe it is inconsistent, period. I mean, they're just inconsistent. They can look great one week, look like a pretty cohesive unit. And then the very next week, just look in disarray. There were some more pre-snap penalties today that reared their ugly head again. And it's just things like that where you're like, no, we were making forward progress. And now, and of course, 3 turnovers passing the ball. You can't do that. I mean, like, that's going to – anytime you give another team 3 more opportunities with the ball, I mean, you're asking for trouble. But again, long drives, sustained, looking good, and then just a turnover, right? Like, again, I believe the Browns, the Chargers gave us opportunities to get back in this game, and we just didn't capitalize on them. Like, there was so many opportunities. And, I actually had a different field level today, so I was kind of up in the 300 level. So I was able to really see some of these plays develop, and, like, some of those were really frustrating where Denzel Ward just got beat deep, on some plays. And it's just like things like that, or guys running the wrong assignment, just things that you don't typically see from this defense just really were exposed today. I mean, like, there were some moments where you're sitting there going, well, that's just not Browns defense typically. They just don't do things like that. So, like, you're right. The front four was there, but we were getting gassed at times on the back end to get beat.
Yeah, they had a really difficult day. The entire defensive secondary. Yeah, the entire secondary had a tough day. But I will give credit. Justin Herbert made some plays. He had some insane throws. There was a back shoulder fade. I think it was they were near the goal line. And Quentin Johnson or Josh Palmer. I forget who it was exactly. But, I mean, beautiful throw. Nothing MJ Emerson could have done. He was in the right spot. So giving credit where it's due, they made some plays. But overall, I don't know what it is. I don't know how you build cohesion at this point in the season. Obviously the bye week, thank God it's here. We don't have to watch. I mean, isn't that crazy? We're on a Browns podcast saying, wow, thank God we don't have to watch the Browns next week, a nice Sunday. And I mean, that's now.
I mean, yeah, but here's the thing. Like, I mean, I think that we're going to have a lot to talk about Wednesday because the trade deadline will have happened. I'm not sure, Allie, when does typically Andrew Berry do his midseason press conference? Is that on a Wednesday? I mean, when does that typically? Is that
Yeah,
middle of
I
the
don't
week?
know. I forget what day it normally falls on. I do want to say it's a Wednesday, so that should be
Okay.
upcoming. I
I mean,
can't wait for that.
yeah, I mean, we're going to have a lot because I will tell you, I'm not going to repeat some of the things on this podcast that Browns fans were physically saying out loud walking down the street. I mean, like it was pretty, they weren't holding back. Let me just put that. And these are just like open conversations they were having with their family and their friends. Um, and the best part today was, Al, you'll love this. I was moving around the stadium today, visiting some people because, there was people all over. And I was down by the 139 section. And there was a little 11-year-old kid. And he just looked at his mom and his dad and he goes, I like Winston. He's okay. We didn't have to pay that other guy all that money. Why do we pay that person all that? I was like, this is an 11-year-old. This is an 11-year-old Browns fan, like literally digesting, like, why did we pay this? But it was just funny. But again, this team's got a lot of soul searching to do in this offseason. And this next week, like I said, I can't wait for our Wednesday show because there is a lot that we're going to be able to digest because we are going to really know, I think, a lot in the next few days what this team looks like and what they're planning on. I mean, there's so many question marks. I mean, I just can't even start.
So many question marks, so many talking points for us. Makes our jobs easy. We don't have to really do a lot of show prep just because this team gives us so much to talk about. We want to give a shout out to our friends over at Cleveland Landscaping, Greater Cleveland Aquarium, Lady Caroline Cruise Ship, Five Iron Golf, Western Reserve Distillers, and also City Barbecue. So be sure to go check all of them out. We said with Jameis Winston, he is high risk, high reward. He can throw the ball. We know that. He's got an absolute cannon.
Big arm.
He's going to make plays. However, he is going to turn the ball over from time to time. And it really just came in cluster today where it wasn't one, it wasn't two, it was three, and they were ugly. They were all very ugly. It wasn't, a bunch of deflected passes in the air and the defender just came down with it. No, it was just a lot of bad throws or missed routes, or I do have to go back and see who's to blame on some of them.
I think one of them was
definitely one of them was. I need to go back and look at some of the other ones, but less some obviously high turnover percentage throws throughout this game. Now you're going to get that with Jameis. That's who he is as a quarterback. That's who he has shown himself to be. But one thing that we did see this game that has been different than the offense up until last week is they do have the ability to move the football. Guys are open. They were making plays. It's just those turnovers came at such inopportune times that they could not do anything to kind of recover from those mistakes. So let's go through the Browns' offensive stats for the day. Jameis Winston, 26 of 46 for 235, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, 6 sacks on the day. Tough. The rushing attack, Nick Chubb, 15 carries for 39 yards. His longest on the day was 11. Jameis ran the ball 5 for 27, and Pierre Strong 2 for 8. Jerome Ford 2 for 5.
Yep.
Cedric Tillman in the pass catching game. Cedric Tillman, 6 receptions for 75 yards, 1 touchdown. He was targeted 11 times. Like we said,
Tillman's got a bright future.
Yeah, he definitely does. This team, this current scheme, they are moving the ball down the field. Jerry Jeudy, he was also targeted 11 times. He came away with 7 of them for 73 yards. So those are, you can rely on these guys. Jordan Akins, 3 for 32. David Njoku, 5 for 29. He was targeted 7 times. Elijah Moore, 3 for 28. So you like to see that distribution. That's not what we saw with Deshaun Watson under center. We didn't see that. So it is nice and refreshing to see the ball able to be moved down the field. But of course, those 3 turnovers really stung there. And of course, all of those sacks just put you behind the sticks. It's just tough. For the Chargers, Justin Herbert, 18 for 27, 282, 2 touchdowns. He was sacked 6 times. Myles Garrett credited with 3 of them. J.K. Dobbins, 14 carries for 85 yards, 2 touchdowns. Their pass catchers, Quentin Johnston, 4 receptions for 118 yards, 1 touchdown. Ladd McConkey, 5 receptions for 64 yards. Josh Palmer, 2 for 63. J.K. Dobbins, 2 for 20, and Will Dissly, 2 for 9. So I mean, when you look at it, you look at especially our pass catchers, you think, okay, they had a good day offensively, really compared to what the Chargers were able to do. But
Right.
nope, unfortunately, just tough day under center.
Yeah, and honestly, it seemed like we got chunk plays, and then we got to third down and just stalled a lot
Yeah.
in this game. Third down, multiple times in this game, we just stalled. And then, of course, the turnovers, driving the ball. I remember at some point I was like, man, the Chargers are giving us the ball twice on the 43 and another one like on the 38. I mean, like we had great field, position in this game too, where to start a drive and it just if it wasn't a turnover, it was a stalled drive and it just didn't happen. And I'm sitting here saying the Chargers are letting us in this game. It's not like they're just shutting us down 3 and out. It's like they're keeping us in this football game. And I'm thinking, man, at one point I was like, man, we could have had at least 14 more points in this game, to where it could have been like maybe a 1 or 10-point game, but we just defeated ourselves today in a lot of situations just because we just could not complete a drive. And I remember coming out of halftime in this football game, looking at the clock, and I was like, man, we just ate up 6 minutes of this third quarter. And I'm like, and we have nothing to show for it now.
Yeah.
And then they go 3 and out, I believe, and then we get the ball right back again. I'm like, okay, again, we screwed up and threw a pick in the end zone, and now we got the ball right back again, and we still didn't cap it. I'm like, my God, how many times can we have an opportunity here and just not capitalize on it? And I think that's the biggest part of this game is like the opportunities we got, we just did not capitalize in this situation.
And we talk about this Browns team, especially, well, no, I can't say especially offensively because today it was both offense and defense, just continuously shoot themselves in the foot so many times. And that's very reflective of a young team, but this isn't necessarily a young team, Dustin. This is a team that has veterans almost at every level on every side of the ball. How do you kind of, at this point in the season, fix chemistry? I don't know how you do that. I mean, I think you're right. It's going to be very telling over the next 7 to 10 days, the course of this team, like the direction that it's headed, buying or selling, or what are we doing? I don't know. Are we going for a top 5 draft pick? We trying to win some games? I don't know. And I think that's so frustrating for fans because you don't know what to expect every single week. Right now, there are no expectations for this team. There are teams, so we watch them. But I don't know how you fix it. The pre-snap penalties came back. The offensive line struggled a little bit today. Defensively, we know the issues that we saw there. Just things that the Browns could control, they didn't. I mean, how do you fix that at this point? I don't know what the answer is.
Well, they always say by mid-season, you should have the stuff fixed, right? At this point, it's halfway through the season, and those things kind of work themselves out. But I don't know at this point. Like, again, I think the Browns, even more than fixing it, need to figure out who their identity is for next year. Because at this point, at 2-7, you're not making the playoffs, period. I mean, your chances are 1 or 2% maybe. So you have to say, okay, how do we keep this team playing competitive for the rest of the year, right? I mean, bought in, I guess is the best way to describe it, instead of being checked out. And what are we doing in the top 10 of the draft? What assets are we trading to teams like the Detroit Lions that are rumored in the next
Zadarius Smith?
Well, yeah. 6 to 12 hours. Stefanski was asked about it in his post-game press conference about, hey, this was put out there at halftime by multiple reports that he may not come back in the game and he's going to be traded to Detroit. He goes, I don't comment on player trades, which I get. I wouldn't either. But for that's a big issue now, right? So you have to figure out how to keep this team cohesively together. The ones that, again, I think it's going to be a big internal, the powers that be, and say, okay, what we have and the assets now we have next year with a 3rd round pick additionally from the Bills, our 1st round and our entire draft picks back and multiple ones. What are we building in 2025? Those conversations are going to happen over the next 10 days. What do the 2025 Cleveland Browns look like? Is it going to be star players on defense with some young talent, and we're going to have a rookie quarterback under center? Those things are going to have to really come out and say, what is our plan, right? Because you really, at this point, halfway through the season, you kind of have to plan for that now, right? You have to figure out as an organization, since you aren't going to go to the playoffs, what do you do to build a team for 2025 for the next 3 to 4 years to be competitive in the NFL, right? Like,
Mhm.
I mean, that's what they really have to figure out. And unfortunately, they have a huge ass contract that is like a dark cloud that they have to deal with that. And that's a whole nother, I mean, we could have a whole show on that. But it's just, what do you do in that situation? Because I don't think a lot of Browns fans are comfortable with Deshaun Watson being under center ever again. And I say this ever again. I mean, there's a consistency out there that they don't want that. And if you have a fan base that says that, and then you just do it anyway, I just feel like you're
So
asking.
that goes back to a couple of weeks ago prior to the injury when we were saying, this team clearly just does fan perception matter to this organization? Do they listen to the fans in any capacity? And what was so ironic was at that time, Nick Chubb comes back and he releases, that nice essentially essay that
Editorial.
he wrote,
Yep.
and
Yep.
it said basically very candidly that Andrew Berry in the front office came to him and said, "Hey, we cannot get rid of you because we know what you mean to this city. The city will revolt if Nick Chubb is not a Cleveland Brown." And to say that in one sentence and that be the message, and then in the other say, "Well, we don't care what you think about the quarterback situation." It's so conflicting, and there's such a contrast there. So which one is it? And now I know you can't sit back and listen to the fans on every single move. Of course you can't. That's why Andrew Berry is getting paid the big bucks, and we're, talking about talking behind a microphone about a team that we like. It's totally different. You can't listen to the fans for everything, but clearly fan perception and perspective, it does matter. It does matter. This team is aware of it. The front office is aware of it. Ownership should be aware of it. Especially something so polarizing as the quarterback. So I agree. I think most fans do not want to see that. And frankly, I think given the injury and given the situation, given the contract, just given everything, I don't think it will happen. I think that next year, whether it's a rookie quarterback or a bridge quarterback, there certainly will be somebody else under center. Maybe it's Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I don't know. And that brings up another question. Do you start him next week? Do you see what you have in DTR the remainder of the season?
I mean, do you think Winston's even trade material? I mean, that was kind of just brought up around today. Like, well, what happens if a team needs a backup quarterback, like say, and I'm just using Miami as an example because if Tua goes down, you got to have somebody serviceable.
I guess.
I mean,
I guess at this point, when you're looking at a top 5 pick, I think anybody is essentially for sale. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to get rid of our favorite players, right? I'm not saying that, but I mean,
right.
you have the conversation. You take the phone call for anybody.
Yeah. Well, and your point is, I don't want them to completely tear it down too, right? At the end of the day, because if you completely tear it down, you're also tearing it down with a big contract looming that you don't know how to get rid of. And so that's a bigger thing. And Allie, you bring up an interesting point there about we're never going to get rid of Nick Chubb, this upcoming next year. I also wonder if the Browns, because of the contractual obligation they have, and what I mean by that is the fans can hate, love it, or like it, you know what I mean? But it doesn't matter. And you know what I mean? Yeah. And what I mean by that is I use the example, like say you're a company that it's a great company, you like working for them, but they're underwater in debt, right? You know what I mean? Like they just can't get from underneath it. And companies like that file bankruptcy or, because they can't get out from under their debt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I kind of feel like the Browns, even though the fans are being very vocal about what they want or don't want, the organization also has a problem within. They can't get out from under a problem, right? Like they're also damned if they do and damned if they don't, because they can't really change. They can't turn back time, right? They certainly can't turn back time. I mean, they moved forward. They have what they have. And so with that, you have a bigger problem, right? Like, you could, say they just blow it all up. We'll just use that example. They blow it all up, but you still have that contract there. That contract still sits there, right? Even if you blow it up, you still have 70-some million, if I'm correct, and 70-some million in 2026, 25 and 26, 140-some million that has to be paid, right? So even if you blow it up, that money doesn't vanish, right? So it's like, do you just not play competitive football for 2 years? I mean, you know what I mean?
No.
Like
it's so no matter what decision they make, in any angle, any direction, no matter what. They're going to have a problem on their hands. And that is the risk you ran when you signed the contract to begin with. And unfortunately, it is what it is. I think some way, somehow, and I don't know how, I don't know what the solution is. I don't think a total rebuild, 1-15, 0-16, I don't think you can ask the fans to do that again. To go from 1-15, 0-16 to such a polarizing trade in Deshaun Watson, and then just to do it again. That's so much. That is so much. And look, I mean, if you really do care about the fans, I mean, this is the fans are what brought the team back. You know, the fans are the reason that Cleveland has a football team after they left for Baltimore. It should matter. But they do have a problem on their hands no matter which way you spin it. It's just a matter of what they do with it. I don't know. I don't know what it is. That's a conversation for another day. But I don't know. If you want to be competitive, I think you have to start selling a little bit. Not everything, but you have to start selling a little bit.
You don't have to have a fire sale. You just have to have a sale, not a fire sale. I mean, that's I guess.
You just have to sell a couple of things here and there. And I mean, we saw this. We saw this happen as quickly as this went downhill. I mean, we saw all it took in 2018 was you get a decent quarterback, you go win some games, people want to come here. People will come here. And that's all it takes. It's a couple maybe simple moves. I think maybe fans are, we have a tendency to overreact on what to do, what the answer is, what the solution is. Ultimately, we don't know. But if we can just make a couple of the right moves to erase some of the absolutely egregious moves, maybe we can get a little bit of buy-in. I mean, Dustin, look, just last week, you had a 1-win football team, and then they go win, and everybody is back in 100% no matter what. We are bought all the way in. And that's all it's going to take.
Well, I mean, I was on the streets here. The bars were packed, Allie. People were excited to go to the football game today. I mean, it was winning, we always talk about this. Winning solves a lot of things. It just does. It was funny. We were all, you'll love this because our show's called the Here We Go Brownies. So we're leaving the stadium. And, usually it's Here We Go Brownies chants. And it was like, here we go, Cavs, here we go.
Where we're at.
So it was like, they're 7-0, right? Like this city is a sports town, right? Like they love their sports. They eat it. They live it. They breathe it. They make their children get in front of a television and watch it, right? Like this is who we are. I mean, look, you're a living example of that. Your father, said, Allie, like it or not, you're going to be a Browns fan, and this is why what we do, right? So, yeah, we're very prideful of our teams, win, lose, or draw. We like our teams. So, yeah, will Browns fans show up next year? Yeah, but they also want to see the organization trying to make positive moves. And there's been a lot of negativity this year and a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And by the way, that big win against your division rival that we hate, oh my gosh, right? That cloud the sky is open, right? It's sunny again. And then it's like, pre-snap penalties, turnovers. Oh, we're back to reality sets in. We still really suck. We're a football team, right? Like this team just wants to see that you want to put a competitive product on the field at the end of the day, I guess is more importantly. Like I think ownership and the front office and the coaching staff, and we don't know, we don't know where all this is going to land, right? I mean, I would be surprised if the Cowboys coach still has a job after this game, so I don't know where the organization is going to go from a coaching standpoint, from a GM maybe there's movement above the Andrew Berrys of the world, where there's some shakeup. I don't know, but I tell you what, we're going to know a lot more in the next 10 days, like we just said, and a lot more to get to on our Wednesday show, because I think those kind of big changes are coming. And I think the fans deserve answers at this point, because it's like, look, your experiment didn't work, Cleveland. What is your solution? If I was a reporter and I'm in that room, that's what I would say. Look, clearly your experiment's not working. How are you going to fix it? You know what I mean? That's the question. Like, how are you going to fix this?
Say what you want about Cleveland beat reporters. One thing about them is they know how to ask the hard questions. They know how to ask difficult and hard to answer questions. And I think that that's what this Browns organization, Andrew Berry, deserves. He deserves the heat. I mean, throw it at him, Mary Kay. Let's see what we can get out of him. Just because I think you're right, the fans deserve answers. Also, want to give a shout out to our friends over at Hartville Marketplace and Flea Market, Teresa's Pizza, Lorello Vineyards, and also Stadium Mustard. Dustin, how was the energy at the game today? I know last week, obviously, we come away with a win. Everybody is just at the bars drinking, having a good time. Energy's up. Was it reminiscent of first couple of weeks with Deshaun Watson, or was this kind of a different feel today?
It was worse, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
I think 3 or 4 weeks ago, people stayed at the game. They waited to see if they could pull it out. I'll be quite honest. I was like, I got a show to do. I got to get back and talk about this. I left at the end of the third quarter. I left, start of the fourth quarter, because I knew the writing on the wall, what was going to happen in this football game. And it was like a big exit of people leaving the stadium into the third quarter because they knew they weren't coming back in this game.
Yeah.
And it's just, I guess for me, that's just more sad, right? Like, when you have a product on the field that the fans are leaving by the end of the third quarter, like they know they know, right? And so I would say it was a little worse today because the fans clearly stayed all the way to the end of the Ravens game for obvious reasons, because it was exciting and it was a fun game and they were in it. But man, 57 total yards in the first half. I think the writing was on the wall for these Browns fans. They're like, okay, we had 57 total yards in the first half. Like, this is not going to be a good day at the office. Like, and so by the end of the third, not much had changed except maybe another turnover or two. And you're like, I'm out. And so a lot of people were like, we're heading for the gates. And so, yeah, it's unfortunate, right? Because there was, and here's the truth. There was a lot of high expectations for this football team. We didn't even get into that today, but there was a lot of, and if somebody told me that at this point, when we were doing this podcast, we'd be talking about a 2-7 football team, I'd be like, no way. Like, no way this would be a 2. I mean, like, okay, maybe 500. Like, that could be the worst case scenario. We're 3-3 or 3-4, but not 2-7. No, I'd be like, no, we might be 4-3, but I would never think we'd be at 2-7 ever at this juncture in the especially when this was our easiest part of the schedule, right? Like, I was like, yeah, down the stretch, not good, right? Going to get rough for us. But this was supposed to be where we could be 4-1 or 5-2, going into the tough part of our stretch, and we're 2-7. And coaches said all the time, you are your record. You are who you are at the end of the year. You are your record. And the Browns are 2-7, and they've got to get this figured out for next year, because fans deserve a winner here in Cleveland. And here's, I want to just talk holistically. This is the first time in a couple decades, maybe it's been a long time, that the Browns made the playoffs in January, the Cavaliers made the playoffs, and the Guardians made the playoffs, all in one calendar year. So the city as a whole is used to winning programs. So, and right now the Achilles heel is the Cleveland Browns. Like, and by the way, this is a football town. Like, let's not kid ourselves. The people love their Cavaliers in this town, the Guardians, but this is a football town, and you've got to fix this, because you have other organizations in this town, like the Guardians and the Cavs, that are figuring out winning formulas and how to put competitive players on the field. You got to figure that out, Cleveland. So we have watchable Browns games for the rest of this year and into next year and beyond. Like, that's just the truth.
Yeah, it's a shame. I agree with you. Browns fans deserve better, but you know who else deserves better is the guys on this team that have kind of just they rode the wave. You got the Joel Batonios of the world, the Myles Garretts, the Charlie Hewletts, who's been around since forever.
Charlie's seen it all. Charlie has seen it all.
They've seen it all. They've lived it all. They've had the highs and the lows, but man, the highs have been great. They've been, obviously one of the highest points that I can remember, but then the lows have been just so low, so low. So not only for the fans, but for the guys on the roster too, for the players that want to be in Cleveland, for those that have chose to stay or have picked Cleveland to play and settle down. Those are the guys that deserve more. As we wrap up here, let's go around the league. The earlier games today, as we know, on Thursday, the Jets came away with a win. Didn't expect that. I thought Texans would clear that one. They did not. A crazy one, Dustin. The Panthers win today, 23-22 over the New Orleans Saints. The Commanders win 27-22 over the Giants. Dolphins, Bills, that was a close one. Bills 30-27. We know what happened in the Browns game, so we won't talk about that anymore. Patriots lose to the Titans 20-17. Falcons beat the Cowboys 27-21. Bengals just absolutely smacked the Raiders 41-24. And of course, the Ravens did the same thing. They absolutely smacked the Broncos 41-10. So that's what happened around the league today. Some more games on currently, and some to look forward to later, or one to look forward to later tonight. But man, just hate these post-game shows where it's just nothing good to talk about.
I'm curious to see how I did in my pick'em.
We'll know Wednesday. I'll tally everything up, and
I'm gonna say I think it's pretty close now, or I might by a month.
We will see.
I might come out of the losers column for once with that 0-6 and 2, whatever the hell it is. It's crazy.
Dustin, you got any closing thoughts before we wrap up here?
Yeah. As a Browns fan that is passionate and loved this football team since the 3rd grade, when someone made me a Browns, Indians, Cavs fan, I will tell you, I'm looking forward to a mental vacation for a week from the Cleveland Browns.
Yep. We all deserve it, don't we? We all deserve it. I'm looking forward to it.
Back there for New Orleans, and I'll be cheering as loud as I can. But I think all the Browns could use a nice little mental health awareness week to
let's just take a break, and
take a break,
get some rest. The players need it, their bodies need it, us fans need it, our brains need it. So we'll enjoy this bye week, this much needed bye week. But in the meantime, thank you everybody for joining us. We appreciate it. Stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, Browns fans, go Browns.
Go Browns.